Alright, hi everyone. So today we are going to be learning on how to start out how to draw our actual image. As you can see, I grabbed an image from online that I will be using to kind of recreate or show you guys how to start to recreate your image. So on here you can see my paper, my actual image paper is much larger than my actual paper that I printed out. So first, what you want to do is with your image, I recommend getting a color pencil or a pen or anything of some sort that you can see pretty prominently in your image. Because what you're going to be doing is you're going to take a ruler and you are going to find lines in your image. Meaning, if I am looking at the sidewalk here, and I'm looking at the bottom of this edge of the sidewalk, it is going into some vanishing point that is all the way down here. I don't know where that vanishing point is yet, so that is what we're trying to find first. So if I use this color pencil, this bright red line should sign up, go all the way down here. So it looks like it's going all the way down, maybe to that doorway down there. Just to make sure, I'm going to use this and I'm going to follow all the way down the side of the sidewalk, all the way down here. So it looks like our vanishing point is going to be right about here on our actual image, following all those lines all the way down. So again, just make sure to find the bottom of those balconies so they all look about even. Just about. All right. So it looks like we got ourselves a 1-point perspective right here, just off of the side of that doorway. So again, that is what you're first going to find when you do your actual project. Now, starting off, looking at the image, what I also want you to do is on the edge. If you guys look at the edge, buildings, balconies, roadways, sidewalks, all exit out the page at certain ways or at certain times. So if we look here in the bottom, we can see that our roadway here ends right here. You can see that. Also ends right here. Our thickness, that sidewalk edge is right there. Same here. Just marking all those areas that I see, all those lines that could go from that vanishing point all the way off here. So thickness of this kind of trimming that it looks like it's going right here. That balcony edge right there. Also the top here where that first building starts going off. We got another building that looks like it's going off right about there. Whoops, right on my paper, but that's okay. So right here, here. And then also looks like about right here. It's right where the edge of that building is. So we're also going to mark here, just another separation between those buildings. This sidewalk goes off here. So it looks about like I got every single line that's going off the page marked off here. Maybe just one more up here. It's right where that balcony ends. All right, did mark out my paper with a little bit of red marks, but that's not going to bother you guys much. All right, so now looking at the image that I created, marked it with this color pencil, which is going to help me a little bit more about how knowing where the thickness of things are. Now going to our actual paper. If you look here, this paper is much bigger than this one. If I am looking here on my paper, the way that I want to start this is by looking at the thicknesses of these certain parts compared to my paper. I'm first going to start with the bottom of my paper here. So I'm going to switch to my pencil. It looks like here, if I am eyeballing this, my road takes up, if this is halfway point, more than halfway. So it's not yet a third. This might be about a fourth here. So if we measure a fourth, a little bit more than a fourth. So there's going to be about there, I would say. Maybe about here looks right. So some of these things you are going to have to eyeball a little bit. So maybe right about here. All right. Another thing to keep in mind is that vanishing point. So I'm going to start with this left-hand side here to kind of help me out. Is this thickness of that sidewalk? Goes a little bit more over here. So again, comparing the image to your actual paper, the image is smaller. So the image, these things are going to be smaller than the actual paper. So that's why I made this thicker than it is here. And this is wider than it is here because the image here is smaller than the actual drawing on the paper. Now, taking in consideration where your vanishing point is, you're first going to see this is, I'm looking at this here, not exactly halfway. So this is a little bit more than past halfway. So using this line here, it's a little bit to the left here. So this is the actual image. So if I'm coming up, about, see, that goes over to the left a little bit. Let's try about right here. It's a little bit past halfway, not quite halfway, but a little bit past. All right. So again, all of these you're gonna have to estimate yourself. Now, starting off here on the sidewalk thickness, right here, that is what I'm focusing on. So these two lines, I'm gonna take this pencil vanishing point. Your vanishing point will never change. So once you put your vanishing point down, that is where your vanishing point is going to end up being. Take this, go very lightly to the side. Yep, it's going just the same as here. So we about eyeball that right on that paper. All right, same thing, right where this is. We're going to then bring that all the way here. I recommend starting with the bottom of your paper, especially roads and things, because that will help you get a base for where all your buildings are going to be. All right, so that is the thickness right here. That's going into that receded line. All right, so now we need to figure out the other side here. So now looking at the other side of my paper, it's a little bit upways. So this is the corner of my paper. It's not going to be directly just like this, so it's going to be up a little bit more. Let's say it's about here. So that's at where the road and the side of the sidewalk meet. And it's going to be a little bit thicker than it is in the image. And we're going to say about right here. So again, this is going to be all eyeballing and measuring. So once you get it started, then you can try to get it as exact as you can. All right, using our vanishing point now and using our straight edge, what we're going to do is we're going to connect these points to our vanishing point. So remember, vanishing point is always important. And I'm doing this all in 1 point perspective. So I'm just bringing it all the way, since these are horizontal lines, to that vanishing point. Just like that. Bring that there. Just like that. Bring this here. And just like that. All right, so it's starting to look like a road. So if you look at this, compare to this, all we did so far is this portion here. So we did road, this little lip of sidewalk, and this portion here too. So now, looking at this image, let's now get in our sidewalks. Also, if you look down here, this does go flat, but we can always crop that off later, because think of this as a top of a box. That is the end edge there. All right, now looking at our road here, and looking at our image, we're gonna say, so if this is our whole image, it's about halfway. It's a little bit less than halfway, so maybe about a third. So I'm saying about, this is halfway. It's about a third. So maybe up here. A little bit more than a third, but that's okay. You can always fix that later. You're going to take your ruler then. So again, I'm focusing on this line here that goes all the way in the bottom of that building to that vanishing point. Just like that. So we look at the image. Might be skewed a little bit more down this way. So again, this is where you can erase. If you're happy with it, you can leave it. I'm not so happy with mine, so I'm going to make it go down a little bit more. So test and trial, do not draw really dark and heavily because it's harder to erase. So I'm just going to move it down a little bit more. All right, just like that. Happy with it? Yes, I am. All right. So now looking at it, we have this little bit of a frame here. That we don't have to worry about until later. If you kind of look at this, this almost goes straight. So it goes a little bit past that vanishing point. So I'm not going to do that one just yet. I just know that the thickness is going to be right like that. So I'm just going to mark that so that I have that reference. All right, now looking at the left-hand side. So again, I'm working on the bottom of the way up. And I'm using those lines that are coming off of the edge first. This here is on the bottom of those buildings. So when I'm going to look here, this is about a little bit before halfway. This is about halfway, so about a little bit before. So we're going to say maybe right there. So it's getting really close to that dot there. You can see I'm maybe a little bit too close. Maybe go a little bit past right here. So again, this is eyeballing it and measuring it with your eye, not complete measurements. So I wouldn't measure anything. And bringing that to that vanishing point. So all the way right like that. So again, this goes all the way to the vanishing point right there, as you can see. All right. So this looking at compared, am I happy with it? We'll say maybe a little bit more skewed downwards. That's just because this looks more flat, like horizontal. So I'm just going to move it down a little bit. So again, these things you can make changes on. Just like that. All right. Yeah, definitely more happy with it now. All right, now looking at the road in distance. So it's a little bit, as you can see here, this goes straight. It cuts off right here. So I'm going to go back to my color pencil so I show you guys that road right like that. So that ends there. So that's because I have a lip. Some of the other guys might have a different image where it goes in, you have a lip there, and then also you have more buildings. That lip will just be on top of that road. Don't worry about it, but that will end up still being there. All right, so looking at this image, you can see we have the top of our sidewalks. This will be start of our buildings, and we got to get our buildings in here as well. So knowing where our buildings start. So each of these buildings are essentially a side of a big box. So the big box side is this whole thing here. It's kind of going off in the distance. You also have different things going on here. You have an indentation here because you have an empty space. You also have buildings that are taller than each other, so you're going to have to crop them off however you feel like, but we will get that to there shortly. So what we're going to end up doing now is right where we marked off where these buildings are, I'm going to do that as well. So looking at my image, definitely about a third. But if I'm looking at my dot here, it's a little bit further away. So there's my dot. I'm going to go about over here. So yeah, it's about a third. Mark that. And then I'm marking where this is too. So I want to make about that then of a building. And I'm going to bring that down all the way to my sidewalk line. So remember that sidewalk line that we just made in the beginning there? Take that. Bring this vertically down. Remember, match it with your paper so it goes straight vertical up and down, so the width the edge of the paper. So vertical lines will always go vertical. And bring it down all the way to right there. All right, so as you can see, so we're going to get this building, and this all here will be this building here. All right, another thing to keep in mind is the balconies. So you can see the bottom of the balconies all kind of match up with each other as you recede into that vanishing point. So what we're going to do is then up here, we're going to put down, so like this is where the bottom balcony is going to go. So we're going to mark that right there. This is all about marking the side of your paper to kind of help guide you on how to measure all these things. So the balconies are going to be all the same as the buildings. I'm just going to mark them very lightly, just like that. Seems a little bit dramatic, so maybe not so much. Maybe I need to bring that down a little bit more. Let's bring this right there. Now it's not going to be exactly like the image. You can make it as close as you can, but again, it's not going to be exactly like the image. All right, just like that. That's as best I'm going to get it. All right, so my building is a little bit thicker here than I probably wanted it to be, but that's okay. All right, so what we're going to do, there's buildings also in the distance. So we got to keep in mind that as they are approaching, this here is kind of where that last building ends. Then we have another building here and another building here. So looking at that, we're then going to figure out, okay, that's the vanishing point. That is where our building ends. So vanishing point, technically the picture is that way, so it's going to be further closer to this way. So we're going to put this here. Now, there's a space here. I'm going to create that space by, if this is where that building ends, so I know it's going to be scooting over a little bit. Okay, now looking back at this, I'm not so happy about where this line is. I'm gonna move this line closer because you can see how thinner this part is and how thick this is. So I'm just gonna move that over here. So then that means I have a wider space in between those buildings. All right, that's better. That looks better too. All right, so I'm gonna bring these up. There we go. All right, and up like this. All right, so that's where these 3 buildings are going to fit in. Seems like a small space, but when you really look at the image, they're very thin as they get towards that vanishing point. So you're not going to see as much. All right. So this will be that gap. This is where that light blue building is, more of the turquoise building here. What I'm going to do is then we're going to create the roof. So now if we use our color pencil, using that vanishing point, you can see how dramatically the top of one of the roofs goes really dramatic up. So I'm using the top of that one, and then you're using this one to see the top of the front building here, and with this yellow one, very dramatic, going that direction. All right, so now that we can see those 3 lines going on those buildings, we know that they kind of go in a dramatic way away from that vanishing point. Just grabbing your pencil for our vanishing point. It's going to follow the same angle as which I created. So, looks like it's a little bit more dramatic. Same as in the image as it is here. So we're going to bring that up this way, which then means that is how tall that building is. Now to you can, without crisscrossing yet, so crisscrossing is more like going to be for windows and doors and so forth inside of buildings. I'm just making this thin because you don't barely see the first building. As tall as my first building is going to be. So I'm going to erase off that line. So making a first plane there. That is going to be this plane right here. Now I'm going to make that next building. You can see the building is going to be right here. So I'm going to follow that second mark there. So I'm adding on here. It's going to be a little bit less dramatic. A bit more this way. But I'm not going to quite go all the way because I need to save a little bit room for this yellow building right here. Alright, so again, I'm going to bring that down to how thick I believe that building is. It's not that thick, but it is thicker than the one that is furthest away from it. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Make a horizontal line, erase that. Alright, and then this last yellow building here, it is a very slight slope. So find that vanishing point. Let's see, I'm going to put it this way so I can see better. It's pretty short. So it looks like this building is going to be about this short. And I'm going to cut it off there. Alright, so we got the faces of the buildings. Now dealing with 1-point perspective, anywhere where there's a corner, you need to go straight back. Now, look at the image. It goes all the way straight back behind those buildings. So any corner looks about horizontal, going back, and about horizontal. Make sure it lines up at the top of your paper. Right back, lines up with your top of your paper. You're not crooked. Goes back, and same with the last one. Make sure you're not crooked, and goes back. All right. So then you have the side of your buildings, the front of your buildings, and so forth. You can always add the little things later. So we just need the main frames of everything right now. All right, so now we got to figure out how much or how we are going to divide our doors and windows, and our windows. So we got levels. So you can see it's a third, a third, a third. This is where using crisscross fractions are only going to give you even halves and numbers. So you first got to divide it into thirds. We already know that this is the bottom of the balcony. So we already know that there's going to be doors and windows below this area. So we already have 1/3 done. We got to figure out where the other third is going to end up being. So if we end up looking at this balcony here, we can determine how tall these windows are and where this is going to be. Again, I'm going to use this color pencil. knowing where the bottom of those windows are and where they're falling into that vanishing point. I'm just going to bring that up and see right there where those windows are coming in. So knowing that, remember this is on the first building. I'm not really focused more on here. I'm more focused on this building here because these windows are a little bit different than these ones. You can see that this has a little bit more of a tallness to here. So really this line's all together here. So I'm going to mark that so you can see that there. All right, so I'm only focused on the light blue building on here. Just taking your pencil, using your vanishing point, getting the same angle as what you did on that actual image. Again, you're going to have to eyeball these things. Just like here. Almost follows the same. There we go. Just like that. All right, so we know that that's going to be top third. It's going to be a middle third. It's going to be bottom third. So really, when you think about it, this top part of the aqua building kind of gets chopped off on the top. So same thing. It's going to disappear there. So you're not going to even really worry much about that. All right, now coming with the balcony. So just as we had in a previous video about how to do a building of our own, we're now using it on an actual building and an image. So this is the bottom of the balcony here. So same line as what we used here. Now we got to add an extension and up. So right here, if we kind of look here, this kind of all goes down into that vanishing point. You can either add it here, but I think I'm going to add it by looking at this here. So knowing that the balcony, top of the balcony, actually goes off on this side here, knowing that that gets in the edge. So if I'm measuring this, it's about halfway, so a little bit before. So this is halfway, so that's halfway, a little bit before. And knowing that that balcony, so a little bit before there, it's going to end up going straight down there. But before I end up going straight down, I'm going to figure out where the bottom, or how to make that bottom plane go into that vanishing point. So looking on here, what I'm going to end up doing is going to take this ruler. I'm going to kind of go. I know it's a little bit off the edge. And I'm going to then go to the vanishing point using, let's see, the thickness here kind of goes off the edge, top of my paper, into the vanishing point, right like there. So that's where the other top portion is going to go there. All right, so that looks like the thickness of the bottom of my balcony, which seems a little extreme. So I'm going to re-measure this right here like this. Kind of get the bottom as it goes. So again, everything you're going to have to change a little bit. So instead of using that measurement, I might just end up making my own. So I have a feeling if it's going that way, so much. There we go. That's all there. All right.